They said it would just be dinner. It felt more like a verdict. The porch light flickered once, as I stepped onto the warped wood steps, the kind of creak that made you wonder how long something could hold before it snapped. Inside, I could already hear the muffled hum of silverware and small talk. Smells of rosemary and chicken drifted out into the spring air, heavy and deliberate like bait. I adjusted my coat, lingered one more second, then rang the bell. Jenna opened the door with a smile too bright to be casual. "Look who finally made it," she chirped, stepping aside. Her hair was curled just right makeup light, but practiced. She always looked her best when she wanted something. The dining room glowed with warm lamplight and old familiarity. Dad was carving the chicken with exaggerated precision, Mom arranging roasted vegetables on her porcelain platter. Aunt May laughing too loud at something Uncle Brian had mumbled. The scene was perfect, too perfect, like a picture framed just before the punchline. "I hope the traffic wasn't too bad," Mom said, not looking up. "It was fine," I murmured. I took my seat across from Jenna, the same chair I'd always used next to the window. No one asked about my weekend. No one asked about work. They moved through the motions like this was just another Sunday. But the atmosphere had weight, heavier than usual. I tried to shake it, letting my gaze drift to the table's centerpiece hydrangeas. My favorite. An odd touch. Mom never remembered things like that unless she needed leverage. Dinner passed in a blur of chewing and polite noise. I barely touched my plate. The real meat wasn't on the table, it was still coming, and it came during dessert. "I have some news," Jenna said, placing her fork down with a deliberate click. Her tone made the room pause. "I've decided to move back to Albany." "Oh, that's wonderful!" Aunt May gasped, her hands clapping together like cymbals. "You've been away too long." "Yeah," Jenna continued, her eyes flicking to mine for just a second too long. "And I'll be staying in Claire's apartment. Just until I find work." I blinked. A beat of silence followed. Dad cleared his throat. "It makes the most sense," he said. "It's just sitting there, while you travel all the time. Jenna could really use the stability right now." "I didn't know we were discussing this," I said slowly. "That apartment is mine. I pay the mortgage." "You barely use it," Mom replied, dabbing at the corners of her mouth like I was being unreasonable. "It's the least you could do after all we've done for you." The words landed like ice water. I looked around the table. No one met my eyes. I wasn't even being asked, I was being informed. And suddenly, I was 12 again, being told we were moving schools because it was best for the family. I was 16 when they chose my summer job without asking, 21 when they used my college fund to cover Jenna's failed business. Always for the family. Always for Jenna. I looked at her again. No apology. Just that same smug tilt of her head, like she'd already unpacked her suitcase. I didn't speak again. Not when Mom poured coffee, not when Dad made some awkward joke about parking, not when Jenna asked if I still had a key under the mat. The longer I stayed silent, the easier it became to hold my face still. Eventually, I stood, kissed Aunt May goodbye, said I had an early flight. Outside, the air had turned colder. My breath fogged the windshield as I sat in the driveway gripping the steering wheel. My knuckles turned white, but I didn't start the car. Not yet. They gave my apartment away before asking me. I should have seen this coming. When someone steals your space, they're not just taking walls. They're taking boundaries. The lock clicked behind me with a sound too sharp, too final. I stood inside the condo. My condo for a moment, keys still in hand, bag hanging off one shoulder. The air smelled faintly of eucalyptus and lemon cleaner the way I liked it. No shoes out of place, no crumbs on the counter, no chaotic energy swirling like a storm. Just clean lines, light wood floors, white walls, stillness. It was the first place I ever decorated without someone else's opinion. No throw pillows from Mom. No photo frames of family memories I never wanted. Just my taste, my order, my rules. I had paid for every piece in here, every lamp, every cabinet handle, on my own. I had earned this space, and now they wanted to hand it over, as if it were a spare couch or an unused guest room. I walked through slowly, as if I needed to memorize the details. The curve of the couch I chose from the clearance floor. the tiny scratch on the hallway mirror from when I moved in, the corner by the window where I sometimes sat with tea, watching nothing at all. These weren't just walls. They were witnesses. My phone buzzed on the console table. Voicemail. Jenna. I didn't play it right away. I knew it would be something between cheerful and smug. I poured myself a glass of water, sat on the edge of the kitchen stool, then hit play. Hey, Claire. Just wanted to let you know we're moving in Saturday. I'll bring my own sheets and stuff, don't worry. You probably don't use the guest closet anyway. Talk soon. The message ended with a bubblegum pop of a giggle. Not a single question. Just another decision made without me spoken, like I was the one being given a favor. I stared at the screen until it went dark. My reflection flashed briefly in the black glass, still calm, unreadable. In high school, Jenna once took my laptop to school without asking. I'd spent 3 weeks preparing for a debate tournament, and all my files were gone after she reset it to factory settings by accident. Mom said I was being dramatic, then made me apologize to Jenna for yelling. I remember sitting on the edge of the couch seething while Jenna sat with a smug little Band-Aid on her ego. This was that again. Just bigger. Colder. I opened my laptop. First, how to end a lease early in New York, then tenant rights when family tries to move in. The results weren't comforting, but I read every word. Each clause felt like a ladder rung in a climb I hadn't asked for. Next, I texted Mr. Hargrove, my landlord. Hi, quick question. If I were to move and needed to sublet or terminate early, what are the formal steps? He replied almost instantly. Hey, Claire, not a problem. Lease allows for early termination with 60-day notice. No subletting, though. You'd need to clear it with me. I stared at the message. 2 lines. That's all it took to unlock a path out. Not a war, just paperwork. I clicked over to the leasing portal, downloaded the termination notice, began to fill it out in silence. I didn't tell anyone. Not Jenna, not Mom, not Dad. I didn't rage or argue. I just answered their decision with my own. No confrontation, just motion. 15 minutes later, the document sat saved on my desktop. I didn't hit send. Not yet, but it was there. Ready. My email was already open when I moved back to my inbox. Unread messages blinked in rows, but one tab waited blank, addressed. To Marcus Hale. Subject inquiry regarding the studio apartment listed on Elmwood. I rested my fingers over the keys, breathing in through my nose, out through my mouth. Then I began to type, Dear Marcus Hale, regarding the ad for your studio. I didn't open the door that morning. Marcus did, with my full permission. Saturday dawned gray and biting. I woke early, not because I had plans, but because my body wouldn't let me rest. The sheets tangled around my legs like questions I no longer owed anyone answers to. I brewed a cup of coffee, black, no sugar, and stood in my kitchen watching steam rise, like smoke from a fire already extinguished. This was still technically my apartment. The walls still echoed my choices. But today, that began to change. The hallway was silent as I locked up. I paused before leaving, brushing my fingertips along the edge of the console table Jenna once called sterile, and I had called intentional. In the bowl near the door, only one set of keys remained, Marcus's. Mine were now on a ring, marked old, tossed into a drawer at my new place across town. The ride to the office was quiet, deliberately so. I took the long route, letting the streets lead me, rather than racing ahead of the moment. By the time I arrived at work, I'd already received the first ping from the doorbell cam. They were on time. Jenna's voice, muffled at first, filtered through my phone as I tapped into the live feed. She stood on the front stoop, sunglasses perched high like armor. Her expression caught somewhere between smugness and confusion. Behind her was my mother, holding a plastic container of something homemade, presumably her signature chicken casserole, which she brought to claim any new place one of us moved into. It was her version of incense. A blessing. Or a curse. I didn't answer. I wouldn't have even if I were standing inside. From the other side of the door, Marcus's footsteps echoed lightly. He opened it without hesitation, pressed slacks button up, shirt calm composure. He looked like he belonged there because he did, and he knew it. Good morning, Marcus said, resting his hand on the doorknob. Can I help you? Jenna blinked as if reality were refusing to load. "We're here to move in. This is Claire's apartment." Marcus offered a faint, neutral smile. "Claire Hale no longer resides at this address. I'm the current leaseholder." Carolyn stepped forward, sharp and indignant. "I'm her mother. We were told I understand." Marcus said, voice still even. "But I have the documentation right here. Lease transfer agreement certified by management. I'm sorry if this comes as a surprise, but you don't have the legal right to enter." The camera caught the exact moment Jenna's face twisted. She didn't say anything about this. "We had plans," she promised. "No such promise was recorded or acknowledged in any agreement," Marcus replied. Carolyn's lips thinned as she stepped backward, fumbling for her phone. The voicemail came 30 seconds later. "You humiliated your own sister," Carolyn hissed into the mic. She had a casserole, Claire. She was carrying her things, expecting to be welcomed by family, and instead she gets turned away by a complete stranger. "You think this is mature?" "After all we've done for you," I didn't reply. Not with words. Instead, I sat in the living room of my temporary Studio Bear mattress on the floor stack of books by the wall, a lamp with a fraying cord that buzzed faintly when turned on. There was nothing glamorous about it, but no one had chosen it for me, and no one could take it away. The voicemail played again. This time, I listened for tone rather than words, rage camouflaging entitlement. Their voices didn't sound like family. They sounded like creditors. I hovered over the delete button, then tapped it without hesitation. Claire listens to the voicemail once and deletes it without a word. They screamed louder. I got quieter. And somehow, that scared them more. Monday morning began with the mechanical hum of my espresso machine and the low click of the blinds rising. The sunlight was weak, just enough to cast soft shadows across the hardwood floor. I didn't check my phone right away. I let the silence stretch, poured my coffee slowly, and wrapped both hands around the warm mug like it was a shield. When I finally tapped the screen, the flood began. 14 texts, 2 missed calls, 3 voicemails, all from some configuration of Jenna Mom, and an unknown number that I didn't need to guess was Uncle Brian's landline. "Claire, please, just talk to us." Jenna's crying nonstop. "Is that really what you wanted? You need to explain yourself. This isn't like you." Their words came fast, a mixture of guilt, confusion, and subtle accusation, like they still couldn't believe I'd acted without their permission. I scrolled through them with a blank face, breathing slow and shallow until I reached one that made my fingers still. "You've embarrassed the family." No punctuation. Just those 4 words like a gavel. I put the phone down and got dressed for work, choosing a navy blouse that Jenna once called too cold. Perfect. The silence I'd chosen yesterday still hung in the air, and I had no intention of breaking it today. At the office cafeteria, I ordered a small yogurt parfait and sat near the window. It was quiet. Monday mornings often were, and I welcomed the stillness. Only after a few bites did I glance at my phone again. A new message from Jenna. "We're just trying to figure out why you're acting like this. Is someone influencing you?" And then from Mom, "You've changed. We're worried." I replied only once, typing each word with calm precision. "Please direct any legal inquiries to my landlord." "Thank you." That was all. I pressed send and let the message settle like dust on polished glass. They'd know I saw everything, and that I was choosing silence over spectacle. By noon, the public campaign had begun. A Facebook post from Jenna popped into my feed, algorithmically promoted, despite our limited contact. Some people love tearing families apart just to feel powerful. Sad. 6 likes. 1 comment from her old college roommate. "You don't deserve this, Jenna. You've always been the kind one." I read it once, locked my phone, and walked into my HR check-in 10 minutes early. Nina, the HR manager, looked up from her desk with her usual warmth. "Claire, you're always early. How are things?" "Good," I said with practiced ease. "Just keeping steady. A little family noise, but nothing I can't manage." She smiled, flipping through the onboarding schedule. "That's good to hear. You're doing really well here. Have you thought about applying for the team lead position next quarter?" We talked shop, internal training updates, new health benefits, some upcoming DEI sessions. I kept my voice level and my posture poised, though the weight of unspoken words buzzed in my coat pocket with every incoming message. Back at my desk, the quiet felt thicker. A new email had landed, its subject line, blank. The sender was unmistakable Brian.Chambers, 1949. I clicked. Your grandmother would be ashamed. You've shamed all of us. That was it. No greeting, no closing, just the blunt blade of moral judgment sharpened over decades of entitlement. I hovered over the message for a long second. Then I clicked the drop-down menu, marked it as spam, and closed my inbox without reading anything else. That afternoon, I received another voicemail from my mother. Her voice trembled between fury and pain. You humiliated your own sister. You blindsided us. Do you even care how this makes you look? I played the message once. No expression crossed my face. Then I deleted it. Some people scream just to prove they're still in control. I found that silence doesn't mean surrender, it's strategy. A quiet wall they can't scale. And when you build enough silence around you, you realize something powerful. They start to unravel all by themselves. Claire marks it as spam. They gave away my door. I locked it and walked through another. Friday arrived cloaked in a quiet that felt earned. The kind that settles in after a storm when the debris has been cleared, and only the soft hum of starting over remains. My new apartment smelled faintly of cardboard and citrus cleaner. The walls were bare, the furniture minimal. A love seat, a bookshelf with only 2 books, and a kitchen stool that doubled as a nightstand. I'd spent 4 days living among half-open boxes and untouched takeout containers, but today I unpacked. Not all at once. One box at a time. One decision at a time. A mug wrapped in newspaper keep. The photo frame from college with Jenna at my side. I held it, stared too long, then slid it back into the box and sealed it shut with tape. Every item was a question. Do I still need this? Does it still mean the same? I opened my closet and hung 3 shirts neatly spaced apart. I arranged my work shoes in a straight line beneath them. There was no clutter, no noise. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing every item here was mine untouched by manipulation or guilt. I took time with each drawer. Pens went into a glass cup, all ink-tested. A notepad with the logo from my first consulting job. I ripped out the used pages and placed it in the desk drawer, blank and ready. The lamp I bought last year at a flea market, the one Jenna said was a little too industrial, now stood proudly next to my bed. Around noon, the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole before opening it. A woman with cropped gray curls stood there holding a potted basil plant in both hands like an offering. Hi there, she said, smiling. Donna Quinn, I'm 2 doors down. Thought I'd introduce myself. I opened the door fully surprised by how normal it all felt. Claire Hale. Nice to meet you. This is for your windowsill. Basil loves morning light. Figured it might make the place feel more like home. I accepted it, warmth blooming in my chest. That's very kind of you. Thank you. She looked around at the boxes still tucked along the hallway. Big move, big enough, I said. Fresh start. Well, if you need anything. Sugar Tools moral support, I'm usually home after 5. She winked, and then she was gone, and the apartment felt slightly less empty. When she left, I placed the basil on the kitchen windowsill. It stood upright, fragrant, and alive. A small living thing that needed care, just like this version of me. Later that afternoon, there was a knock. Marcus, my new tenant, stood at the door with a stack of redirected mail. These came today, he said, handing them over. Forwarding must still be catching up. Thanks, Marcus. How's everything over there? He smiled. Quiet, clean. They haven't come back. I nodded. Good. They won't. Back inside, I flipped through the stack, mostly junk, one overdue catalog, and a handwritten envelope addressed in Jenna's handwriting. I didn't open it. I slid it into the trash unopened. My phone buzzed soon after. Jenna, please, just explain. You've made Mom sick. No hi, no acknowledgement of what they did. Just a continuation of the same pattern, guilt as currency. I stared at the message thumb hovering over the screen, and then I pressed delete. Blocked the number. No anger, no tears, just clarity. I stood at the window, sunlight hitting the basil plant, just as Donna promised. The world outside moved on traffic neighbors, the distant bark of a dog. None of it required my participation. I thought of the apartment they tried to steal, how it was once the only place that felt like mine. But I didn't just keep them out, I walked away from the whole frame they built around me. This new space wasn't stolen or inherited. It wasn't a compromise. It was chosen. It was clean. And for the first time in years, I could hear myself think. I took a breath, a real one. Then I whispered to no one in particular. Now, let's begin. They showed up again. But this time, the door had something to say. The footage flickered to life on my phone. Gray skies, the buzz of wind brushing against the microphone, and two familiar silhouettes standing stiffly outside my old condo. Carolyn's coat was cinched too tightly around her waist, the kind of control she always pretended was elegance. Jenna looked cold arms, cross-tapping her foot like the door owed her something. They hadn't called ahead. Of course they hadn't. Instead, they'd arrived with two strange men in orange jackets, hauling a dolly and a set of moving boxes. One mover looked confused. The other leaned on the rail, checking his phone. Behind them, Jenna jiggled the key I never gave her, gleaming like some family heirloom she thought entitled her to entry. Inside, Marcus stood just out of frame. I couldn't see his face yet, but I could hear him. "I'm sorry," he said calmly, his voice audible through the smart intercom. "You're not authorized to enter. I'm the legal tenant." Jenna stepped up to the camera, too close, her image distorted. "You're a squatter," she snapped. "This is my sister's place. She doesn't even live here anymore." I watched from my new rental, standing barefoot on cool wood floors, coffee forgotten in my hand. The smart home app let me adjust the volume zoom in. I did both. Carolyn tried the key, jamming it into the lock. Marcus opened the door partway, just enough to be seen no more. His hair was slightly messy, like he'd been doing something real, writing maybe, or painting. He held a stack of papers in one hand. With the other, he lifted the lease. Printed, signed, notarized. "Legally binding," he said. "And recorded. You're being filmed right now." For a moment, Jenna looked like she might push past him. The mover behind her shifted uncomfortably. Carolyn, never one to lose a scene, stepped forward with that pinched fury she saved for embarrassing moments. "We're her family," she barked. "She wouldn't do this to us." Marcus didn't blink. "I'm her tenant." Then, clean as a knife, he reached into his pocket, pressed a button on his phone, and a second camera feed began recording from his angle. He was calm, professional, entirely unmoved. It was the first time I truly saw what it meant to be protected by boundaries I had built. The mover leaned over. "Ma'am," he said to Jenna, "do you want us to unload, or—" She waved him off, mortified. Her face had gone red, jaw tight. She turned to Carolyn, then to Marcus, then the camera. "You think you're so clever," she hissed. "She'll come back. You'll see." Marcus only nodded. "If she does, she'll knock." They left in stages. First the movers awkwardly retreating to the van, then Jenna muttering. Carolyn lingered longest, like the building owed her closure. When she finally stepped away, she looked directly at the camera. "You always were ungrateful," she whispered. I tapped the screen on my phone and saved the recording. Named it something clinical backup, door incident 04.27. I added it to a growing folder organized neatly by date. That night, I didn't replay the footage. I didn't need to. Just knowing I had it, undeniable proof was enough. Claire emails the video to herself. Subject line, backup. Door incident 04.27. Silence can be louder than any slam, especially when it's public. Rain tapped gently on the window of the Quiet Roast, a small cafe tucked between a bookstore and an old music shop. I liked how the name suited me lately. Quiet, deliberate, unassuming. My table in the back corner had a chipped ceramic mug and a half-finished scone forgotten beside my phone. I stared at the blinking cursor for a long time. Then I typed, "When your family believes your paycheck belongs to them, what do you owe them?" No tags, no names, just words floating in the anonymous ether of a popular confession forum, where real stories were often dressed as hypotheticals, and hypotheticals felt more honest than real life. I pressed post. At first, nothing happened. Just a few generic likes. I kept scrolling, pretending not to refresh every few seconds. But within 15 minutes, the comment count jumped. People were responding. Nothing. You owe them nothing? Girl, same. My brother demanded I pay his rent because I make more. I said no. Now I'm selfish. Depends. Did they help you get that paycheck? Or are they just trying to guilt you? The range of voices was staggering. Supportive, critical, confused, but above all, engaged. I wasn't alone in this tension. Family entitlements were louder than most of us admitted. Nina's name popped up on my private messages. Is this about what I think it's about? I didn't reply. I didn't need to. She knew. Everyone in the office had probably heard whispers about my recent lease termination, though I'd offered no explanations. Instead of responding, I screenshot the comment thread, every paragraph of solidarity, every accusation, every gut punch of recognition. Some were harsh, sure, but most came from places of experience, of betrayal, of learning to say no. One in particular stood out. It was just 7 words. You don't owe them silence. I read that over and over, the screen light reflecting against the rain-streaked window beside me. I didn't know who had written it, but it felt like a dare and an invitation. Across from me, a couple laughed quietly over something on their laptop. A college student wiped his glasses dry with his hoodie. The barista hummed a tune I vaguely recognized. Life was going on. Mine could too. I opened a new document on my phone. Title: Timeline of Financial Abuse. Draft. 1. My fingers hovered. I didn't start writing right away. I just stared at the blinking cursor this time, not with fear, but with purpose. I would write everything, not out of revenge, but out of record, out of defense, out of finally giving form to the shapeless feeling that had haunted me for years. This wasn't about one apartment. It never was. This was about every holiday where I paid the bill and no one said thank you. Every family trip that drained my savings, every emergency loan that never came back, every time Jenna cried poor while wearing something new I hadn't even bought myself. They'd called it support, obligation, love. But I was starting to see it clearly now. I sipped the last of my cold coffee and saved the blank document. No words on the page yet, but something had shifted. This silence. It wasn't passive. It was the deep breath before a storm. Claire opens a blank document titled Timeline of Financial Abuse. Draft 1. They always said family first. They just never said whose family. I stared at the line graph glowing on my laptop screen. The dates stretched back nearly 6 years, dotted with digital transfers. Small at first, $50 for Jenna's books, $200 when Mom's car suddenly gave out $85 for a copay Dad forgot to cover. Then the amounts grew steady and sharp, like a heartbeat, spiking $1, $200 for Jenna's rent, $400 for Carolyn's urgent dental. I had color-coded each entry: blue for Jenna, red for Carolyn, green for Ron. The rainbow of resentment. At my desk in the back corner of the office, no one could see my screen. Outside the window, the April sun peeked through tree branches, just starting to bloom. But inside my head, everything felt bare. Ms. Tilda walked past with a to-go coffee, nodded politely. I returned the nod fingers, still flying over the spreadsheet. It wasn't that I wanted revenge. I wanted record. Proof. I'd lived too long being told I was exaggerating, that helping out was just what good daughters did. I opened Cash App, then Venmo, then Zelle. The history was endless. I pulled texts from my phone, ones I'd archived instead of deleted, just until Friday. You know Jenna's struggling. You make more than us. We're not asking a lot. I guess you're too good for your own family now. They didn't read like abuse until you saw the pattern. Until you counted the months. Until you realized it wasn't help, it was harvesting. Each file I added to the drive felt like peeling back a layer of denial. Every receipt, every timestamp, every late night, can you just, became a stitch in a tapestry they didn't know I'd been weaving. For years they'd counted on my silence, that I'd give without question. That love meant unlimited access. But love has a price, and I'd paid it in overdraft fees and missed opportunities. At one point, I paused, rubbing my temples. A screenshot stared back at me. Carolyn's message from last Thanksgiving. Don't bring anything expensive, it'll make Jenna feel bad. I had gone to the grocery store that morning and swapped out a bottle of Merlot for a generic red blend, because God forbid my success left a taste in someone else's mouth. I never once posted photos of my promotions. I hid the raise. I declined a speaking engagement so I could help Jenna babysit, and they took all of that as proof I could always do more. The final document I added wasn't financial. It was a scan of a birthday card. My 25th. Jenna had written in pink ink, "You're like a second mom to me. Thanks for always being there. I couldn't do this without you." At the time, I'd cried. Now I just stared. At home that evening, I arranged everything into a Google Drive folder titled The Family Ledger. Screenshots, PDFs, text threads, the spreadsheet summary. Then I clicked Share. Sent it to myself, then to Nina with no explanation. Marcus called while I was closing the lid of my laptop. "Just checking, are you okay?" "After Saturday? Better now?" I said. "I'm doing inventory." He paused. "Need help sorting anything?" I smiled at that. "Not unless you're good at color-coding guilt." He laughed soft and dry. "Actually, I might be. Let me know." After we hung up, I stared at my phone for a while. Then I opened my social feed and typed a single sentence. Financial abuse thrives in silence. No hashtags, no backstory, just that. I pressed post. The likes came quickly. Nina's was first, then Donna's, then people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some commented with hearts, others with hands raised like they were in church. That's when Jenna's message popped up. "You are going too far." I didn't respond. Instead, I screenshotted it and filed it under pattern. "You prepare for the battle, but you never expect the aftershock." I had expected backlash, anticipated it even, but I hadn't expected the hollowness of it, how quiet cruelty could sound when masked as concern. The day started with coffee that tasted burnt and emails that went unopened. I sat on the edge of my bed with my laptop balanced on my knees, watching the numbers rise beneath my latest post. Financial abuse thrives in silence. It had now surpassed 2,000 likes, dozens of shares, messages from strangers saying I thought I was alone. And then I saw Jenna's name. It was a public post, lengthy, polished, rehearsed. A portrait of grief masquerading as vulnerability. She wrote, "My sister is the kind of person who looks put together on the outside. But sometimes being successful makes people forget their roots. Our mother has been ill. I won't go into detail, but Claire hasn't visited, hasn't even asked. It breaks my heart to say this, but I hope no one else ever forgets what family truly means." Underneath the comments poured in, "Wow, I had no idea. She always seemed so cold. Sending love to your mom. She raised 2 daughters, one of them still remembers." My chest tightened. I knew this move. Frame the narrative before the truth can settle. Gaslight by omission. A notification flashed. Aunt May had unfriended me. Then my cousin Ellie. Then 2 former neighbors. Each tiny icon disappearing like lights switching off in a hallway. I closed my laptop. The call came at noon. "Hello, this is Officer Reed with the Albany PD," the voice said. "We've received a wellness concern report regarding a resident at this address. Just protocol. May we stop by for a brief check?" I didn't ask who sent it. I already knew. When the knock came, 20 minutes later, I opened the door, slowly. A young officer and a woman with a notepad stood on the porch, rain jackets, beaded with drizzle. "You're Claire?" he asked. "Mind if we check in?" I offered them tea. They declined politely. There were no visible signs of distress, no red flags. I answered their questions in a steady voice. I even smiled once. When they left, I locked the door behind them and leaned against it, eyes closed. I wanted to cry, but no tears came. Just the dull, pulsing ache of someone who had been disbelieved so often, she'd stopped reaching for the tissues. That night, I did the dishes by hand. I could have used the dishwasher, but the motion of scrubbing gave me something to hold on to. I washed the wine glass carefully until my grip slipped. It shattered against the porcelain sink, the stems slicing a thin line across my finger. Blood dotted the sponge. I stared at it, unmoving. I remembered a text from my father years ago during one of Jenna's spirals. I'd begged him to step in. He responded, "You always were too sensitive for your own good. Let it go." I found it in my old messages now. Still saved, still glowing like a fresh wound. I stared at it for a long time. Then I pressed delete. Not archived, not saved. Gone. And softly, like a vow, sealed in an empty kitchen, I whispered, "Not anymore." They wanted me to explain myself, so I let the numbers do it. I stared at Jenna's post again that morning. The same feigned heartbreak, the same passive-aggressive language meant to provoke sympathy. Her friends and distant relatives had taken the bait, offering condolences like she was mourning a death mine. I didn't owe her another explanation, but I owed myself closure, and I had it neatly organized in one link. I sat in the office break room, the hum of the fridge competing with the clink of ceramic mugs. A leftover bagel was growing stale on the counter. I barely noticed. My fingers hovered over the keys one last time. Then I hit enter. My reply to Jenna's post appeared just below her dramatic monologue. Here's the full picture. The family ledger. Read-only access. For a few moments, there was nothing. Then a like. Then another. Then 3 shares in a row. I didn't refresh. I didn't need to. My hands were steady now. 10 minutes later, I got a message from Nina. Just 3 words. "You posted it," I replied with a screenshot of the link. No caption. She reacted with a stunned emoji, followed by a heart, and then took guts. "Proud of you." I stood and poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, ignoring the trembling that had settled quietly in my chest. I wasn't sure if it was fear or relief, but I welcomed it either way. That night, back in my new kitchen, I lit a candle. Just one. The flame flickered as I sat cross-legged on the floor laptop, open in front of me. The soft glow made the room feel warmer than it really was. I opened my inbox and composed a new message. To Officer Reed, subject apartment footage. Incident 04. 27 body. Dear Officer Reed, per our previous conversation, please find attached the video file showing the interaction at my former residence on April 27th. The lease agreement is visible in the recording. Thank you for your time, Claire. I attached the video. The one where Carolyn and Jenna arrived with mover's key in hand. Where Marcus calmly asserted the lease. Where Carolyn shouted, "We're her family," and Marcus replied, "I'm her tenant." It was all there. Time-stamped. Clear audio. No need for narration. I clicked send. For the first time in weeks, my shoulders lowered. The buzz of my phone cut through the stillness. Marcus. His message was short. "What you did? That was brave." I stared at it for a moment. Brave. No. That wasn't it. I hadn't been fearless. I'd been exhausted. And in that exhaustion, something shifted. The need to explain had faded. The need to apologize had evaporated. I typed back, "Not brave. Just done being quiet." I hit send and closed my eyes. They thought they could claim my home. But they didn't expect me to reclaim myself. I stood in front of the building I used to live in, holding nothing but a clipboard and a key fob that no longer opened the front door. The clouds above Albany hung low and heavy, threatening rain, but never following through, just like promises from people who once swore they'd protect me. Mr. Hargrove waited at the entrance, his pressed khakis already damp at the hem. "Miss Brooks," he said, giving me a firm nod. "We're set for the final walkthrough. Shouldn't take long." "Let's do it," I replied, adjusting the collar of my coat. I didn't need long. I just needed clarity. Marcus was already upstairs. He stood just inside the apartment, hands folded in front of him, like a docent guarding an exhibit. The apartment looked smaller now, stripped of my life, stripped of warmth, but not of meaning. The echo of my past was still there, and I intended to close that chapter on my terms. "Morning," he said simply, stepping aside. I crossed the threshold without hesitation. Mr. Hargrove began methodically inspecting the space-marking notes on his form. Faucet, windows, stove. His silence was comforting a buffer against what I knew was coming, and it did. The sound of heels on tile. A voice sharp too loud for the space. You never answered our messages. Carolyn burst through the door, dragging Jenna in her wake like a storm front dragging debris. You don't get to ignore your own family. Jenna looked paler than usual, her arms wrapped around a manila folder, eyes darting between the three of us like she was searching for a referee. This is a legal walkthrough, I said, turning toward them with calm I hadn't known I possessed. Not a reunion. Carolyn ignored me, locking eyes with Marcus. You again? Do you enjoy causing problems, or is this just a hobby? Marcus didn't blink. I live here. Legally. This is Claire's apartment, Jenna cried, stepping forward. She said I could stay here. She didn't mean it like this. I didn't answer her. Instead, I motioned to Marcus, who produced the folder he'd prepared, time-stamped emails, the updated lease agreement, copies of letters from the building office, all bound and neatly labeled. We've been more than transparent, Marcus said evenly. Miss Brooks transferred her lease and vacated the unit properly. I've lived here since April 15th. Carolyn's face darkened. This is about pride, isn't it? You think we owe you something, so now you're punishing us. No, I said. This is about boundaries, something you never learned to respect. Carolyn took a step closer. You owe us this space. Jenna needs it, she's your sister. This space never belonged to you, I said, voice unwavering. And Jenna is an adult. So am I. And I no longer owe anyone pieces of myself just to keep the peace. The room went still. Mr. Hargrove cleared his throat and stepped forward, holding up the signed inspection sheet. Miss Brooks has fulfilled all terms of the lease. Her responsibilities here are complete. Carolyn's mouth opened to protest, but no words came. Just the simmering of entitlement slipping into disbelief. Jenna looked at me like she didn't recognize the woman standing in front of her. And maybe she didn't. That woman wouldn't have dared speak this way before. Jenna stepped forward, lowering her voice. You've changed, she said, eyes glassy. You're not family anymore. I held her gaze. No, I said softly. I'm not. They left without another word. Carolyn huffing Jenna, trailing like a shadow behind her. Marcus exhaled. You okay? I nodded slowly. Yeah, actually, I am. The echo in the room wasn't empty. It was mine now. Not because I owned it, but because I'd finally chosen to leave it on my terms. If I had written that letter years ago, maybe I wouldn't have had to say it out loud now. The light in the kitchen was soft, almost golden. Morning filtered through the sheer curtains like a gentle breath, the kind you don't realize you've been holding until you finally exhale. I hadn't made coffee yet. The kettle sat cold on the stove, but my hands were wrapped around something warmer, a leather-bound journal I hadn't opened in years. I'd kept it hidden in a bottom drawer tucked under tax folders and warranty receipts, a graveyard of adult paperwork. I wasn't even sure why I pulled it out today. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the way the air had shifted after yesterday's confrontation. Whatever it was, I opened it and I read. There in my own handwriting was a letter I never sent. Dear Mom and Dad, sometimes I wonder if I'm just a bank account that grew legs. You call when the car payment is late, or when Jenna's tuition is due, or when someone needs help with a deposit. But never when I'm tired, never when I'm quiet, never when I need you. The entry was dated July 3rd, 2019. I was still living paycheck to paycheck, then still under the illusion that being useful would eventually turn into being loved. I remembered writing that letter late at night, lights off except for my desk lamp, the fan humming above. I remembered crying halfway through, then tearing out the page and stuffing it back in. I never sent it, never meant to. It wasn't a cry for help, it was a record. A kind of emotional timestamp proof that I had once tried to explain myself. And now I didn't owe anyone an explanation. I flipped to a clean page. The pen felt heavier than I remembered. Maybe because I had more to say now. Or maybe because this time the words weren't tangled in guilt. To the people who raised me, I forgive you. Not because you apologized. Not because you understand. But because carrying this weight has bent me long enough. I release you not out of kindness, but out of necessity. I refuse to make a home out of debt. I refuse to measure love in invoices. I am no longer an extension of your need or Jenna's failings. I am myself, and that is enough. I signed it with my full name, Claire Elise Brooks. Then I folded the page, slid it into a small envelope, and wrote across the front, "Never send." I placed it in a drawer next to the spoons. The knock on the door was soft, almost hesitant. Donna's voice came next, cheerful always, with that tinge of, "I baked something and need an excuse to share." "Claire," she called. "Block party starting down the street. Nothing wild, just lemonade and gossip." Figured I'd ask. I smiled faintly. My first instinct was to say no. That I had laundry, that I was writing, that I was tired, all the usual excuses. But instead I opened the door. She stood there holding a plate covered in foil, her face open and kind. "Cookies?" she said, shrugging. "The good kind, not the store-bought kind." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. "Give me 5 minutes," I said. "I'll grab shoes." Back in the kitchen, I didn't look at the envelope again. I didn't need to. The act of writing it was enough. I didn't need it to be read or acknowledged or dissected. I needed it to exist. And now it did. When I met Donna outside, the breeze was cool. Kids rode scooters along the sidewalk. Someone had strung paper lanterns between 2 porches. "Nice day for not explaining yourself," she said out of nowhere, as if she'd read my mind. I laughed, startled at the accuracy. "Yeah," I replied. "It really is." That night, after the sun had dipped and the lanterns glowed soft orange, I sat at my desk and looked at the sealed envelope one more time. I didn't open it. I just whispered to no one in particular, "I'm done explaining." She didn't come to say sorry. She came to see if I'd broken. The night was sticky with the hum of summer cicadas, their buzz rising and falling like a warning under the porch light. I was sitting on the steps with a glass of water in hand, watching the condensation bead and slide, when I saw the car pull up. I didn't move. The headlights dimmed. The engine stopped. The car door opened, then closed with a soft thud. I heard the tentative crunch of shoes on gravel. Then came the voice I hadn't heard in weeks, not since she typed it instead of saying it. Claire Jenna stood just past the gate, her hand resting on it, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to enter. She wore one of Mom's old cardigans, the sleeves swallowed her hands. Her face was pale, but her lips were glossy painted effort. I was nearby," she began. "I thought maybe we could talk. Just for a minute." I didn't reply. I didn't invite her in. She walked forward anyway. "I'm not here to fight. I swear. I just wanted to say..." She trailed off, searching the porch like it might give her the words. "Mom's not doing great. She's not sleeping. She cried last night. It's been hard." A pause. "She keeps asking why you're doing this." I looked at her then. She was standing with her arms crossed tightly, not from the cold, it wasn't cold, but from the kind of discomfort that came when the story you were used to telling no longer made sense. "I'm not doing anything," I said. She took another step forward. "I know things got messy, but we're family, and families have messy chapters. We've all made mistakes." There it was, the substitute, the convenient placeholder for an apology. "We've all made mistakes," I repeated, voice even. "Is that your way of saying you did?" She blinked. "Claire, this isn't about blame." "No," I said. "It's about accountability. You walked into my life like you were owed something. You moved through it without asking, assuming. That's not family. That's trespassing." She flinched. I just thought she said, her voice faltering, "Maybe we could figure out how to fix this. Start over." "Do you regret what you did?" I asked. "Or just how it turned out?" Silence. The cicadas swelled. Jenna didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her feet shifted backward, retreating not with guilt, but with the stunned realization that the version of me she had always known, compliant, quiet, hesitant, was no longer present. She turned without another word, walked down the steps, and disappeared into the dark. I stood up, not rushing, and closed the front door behind her. The latch clicked into place, with finality. Not dramatic, not angry, just Certain. I turned around. Marcus was standing in the hallway, holding a mug of tea. He must have heard everything. You did the right thing. Healing doesn't make noise, but it changes everything. The sky that Sunday afternoon was the kind of pale blue that made everything feel gentler than it should. I parked near the side entrance of the community thrift store with 3 cardboard boxes stacked in my trunk. The handle of one had started to tear. I had to cradle it close like it might fall apart on the way in. Inside the store, the air smelled faintly of dust and lavender. Donna met me at the door, already wearing her volunteer apron. "You sure about this?" She asked, her voice soft, but not pitiful. I nodded, my grip tightening on the first box. "Yeah, I'm sure." We carried the items in together. Old cookbooks, picture frames I'd meant to refill, but never did. And a blue porcelain vase my mother once swore she loved, though she never used it. I placed the vase gently on the donation shelf and took a step back. It didn't shatter. The world didn't tilt. It just sat there, as if it never belonged to me in the first place. Donna squeezed my hand once, before heading off to help sort through another batch of donations. I wandered into the park next door, following the winding path of cracked stones and tiny yellow flowers. Children ran past me, shrieking and sticky with juice. Their joy was so unfiltered and so wild and free that I nearly laughed out loud. A little girl with a braid down her back stopped in front of me. She looked up, tilting her head. "Are you sad?" she asked. I blinked, surprised. "Not today." She grinned and pulled something from her pocket, a small beaded bracelet, crooked and bright. "Then this is for being brave." Before I could respond, she ran off again, her sneakers slapping the pavement. I stood there holding the bracelet like it was some kind of medal. And maybe, in a way, it was. Later that evening, back in my bedroom, I watched the light shift across the wall. Golden at first, then dimmer, softer, until the whole room was bathed in blue shadows. The closet door was slightly ajar. I opened it all the way. One side was still half full with folded sweaters and hanging scarves. The other side was empty, bare rods and open space. It used to make me anxious, that kind of emptiness. But now, it looked like possibility. I sat down with my journal and flipped to a clean page. I wrote slowly, deliberately. I didn't lose them. I let go. I let go of the belief that I owed more than I could carry, that if I just did one more thing, fixed one more mess, swallowed one more feeling, I'd finally earn my place. I let go of that little voice that always asked, "What if you're the problem?" and started listening to the louder truth you're allowed to leave. It didn't make a sound. No fireworks, no final scream. Just a click of the pen and a long, even breath. As I set the journal down on my nightstand, my phone buzzed. A message from Donna. "We're meeting at the lake house next week. You should come." They erased me from the family, so I built a life with my name on it. The drive to Donna's lake house was longer than I remembered, but then again, I'd never taken this route before. I passed through winding roads, clusters of pine and wildflowers erupting at the edges of a world that no longer scared me. It was Sunday, May 12th, Mother's Day. I didn't need a reminder. I parked slowly, taking in the still water behind the house, the warmth of early evening light slipping across the surface. Laughter floated from the porch, gentle, human. Not the brittle kind I'd grown up deciphering. I stepped out feeling the gravel under my shoes like punctuation. One last period to a long, sprawling sentence. Donna opened the door before I could knock, holding a glass of lemonade. "You're not late," she said with a knowing smile. "You're exactly on time." Inside the house smelled of cinnamon and lavender. People I barely knew offered chairs, drink space. Not expectation, just space. Marcus waved me over with a half smile and a raised glass. "Welcome back," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "Back from where?" He shrugged. "Wherever you had to go to remember who you were." I chuckled, soft, real. Still remembering, there were 5 others scattered in the room, a retired teacher, a young couple with paint on their jeans, a teenage girl braiding string into a bracelet, and a little boy who looked vaguely like my brother at age 6 before everything became conditional. We moved out to the deck as the sun began to dip. Someone handed me a blanket. Someone else made a joke about mosquitoes. I didn't correct them. I didn't shrink. I didn't wait for approval before laughing. A neighbor leaned toward me during a lull in the conversation. So he asked gently, "What brought you here?" I didn't answer right away. I watched the light move across the water, bending like it too had learned how to change shape to survive. I could have said a dozen things: betrayal, silence, grief, defiance. But those were just the roots. Peace, I said, and the promise to never disappear again. No one asked for more. No one needed a backstory. Later, while the others drifted inside to cut cake or refill drinks, I found myself walking toward the dock. My feet knew where to go, even if my mind had quieted. The boards creaked beneath me as I stepped out over the lake, just far enough that I felt alone, but not isolated. The child with the bracelet had followed silently. She reached up, placing the woven string in my hand. "It's for being brave," she whispered. I knelt and tied it around my wrist. Behind me, I heard Donna calling for sparklers. Music played softly through someone's phone. A breeze lifted my hair. I turned to face the water. The golden light caught my face as I stepped to the edge of the dock, letting it warm the parts of me I'd buried long ago. Fade to light. If you followed my journey, you know this wasn't about revenge. It was about remembering I had a voice. If you've ever been guilted into silence, overlooked by the people who were supposed to protect you, then maybe you see yourself in me. I didn't fight to hurt them. I fought to reclaim my name, my peace, and my place in the world. So if any part of you has ever whispered, "You deserve more," I hope this story is your sign. Don't wait for permission to begin again. You are allowed to walk toward the light on your terms. To anyone watching, listening, or reading, thank you. Comment below if you've ever had to choose yourself. What did that moment feel like for you? Would you do it again? And here's my advice, from one survivor to another. Letting go isn't giving up. It's choosing not to carry what was never yours to hold.